Thanks for having me, everybody. I'm Nick Goodman. I'm a product manager here at Microsoft. I'm also one of the founding members of the Security Copilot team and thrilled to get to share where we are in our security agents journey with you. So, even before agents, we've seen good results in customers using Security Copilot. For example, uh, security teams doing incident response see that that's happening about 30% faster when they're using Security Copilot. Um, we, generally speaking, are seeing uh, Security Copilot driving faster results, making it easier to do the hard security jobs, and allowing us to have results that stick. But even with the first generation of generative AI, we still need something that's smarter and faster and more effective. And I think all of you have seen agents, you've seen AI evolve past the first generation of ChatGPT inspired things into agentic type capabilities. And that's where our agents come in. Security Copilot is now evolved to have AI agents that operate built on its platform and across the Microsoft Security Suite. And all throughout this, the core concepts are it's gonna meet you where you are. It's going to help you do existing security jobs better, and all with people still in control of what's happening. And I'm going to contrast this a bit with automation, not because agents just are an upgrade on automation or a replacement for automation, but because a lot of the value that we talk about will sound like automation. And I think it's pretty important to have the right mental model for how security AI agents in our platform are different than traditional automation. So we think of traditional automation that's going to exist in your SOAR or any sort of framework. You've got if statements, you've got for loops, potentially, you've got functions. People wrote them. People wrote the logic for them. And if there was logic that a human could not capture in code, it didn't get captured. If there is a fundamentally new data type that a human could reason about, but was not captured in the code, you're rewriting that automation. If you're dealing with unforeseen circumstances, you're rewriting that automation. So automation does many, many things well, especially routine, highly similar tasks. But there are also just many, many things it does not do terribly well. And what Security Copilot's agents do is fundamentally different. They dynamically plan and reason about tasks and execute that plan, changing it as they go. So very much the way you and I operate. We might think about a task we're going to do, use our experience and our training to figure out how we would do that task. But then as we're going through it, we might discover new information that changes our mind about how we're going to approach it. Or we might realize that a thread we were pulling in an investigation didn't lead where we thought it was going. It's more interesting. So maybe we put more time into it. Security Copilot agents do the same sort of reasoning throughout their execution of their task, which allows them to do significantly more than we were capable of in the past. So as of today, we now have 13 agents that are live and active. 6 written by Microsoft. And personally, I just love seeing that there's actually one more agent written by somebody outside of Microsoft than inside. And I realize that it's sort of an arbitrary thing. We easily could have ended up with a 7th one of ours, or 6th of third party, or 8 of third party agents. But what this really is indicative of is our commitment to building with partners and Security Copilot being an ecosystem and a platform where others beyond just Microsoft are successful and are able to use the AI capabilities we're delivering. So we've got 6 different agents that are out there today from Microsoft. I'll primarily today talk about those, and I'll walk you through what each of them does. But these agents written by our partners are also really great and really show the breadth of capabilities possible with AI. So let's start with phishing triage. So obviously, phishing is still a problem in the world. I don't think I'm breaking new ground to say that. And one of the consequences, the amount of phishing, is there's a button in most email clients that allows you to report phishing incidents. And many of our customers have told us that that button is just clicked all the time. People click it on marketing emails, they click it on spam emails, they click it on emails from people they don't like, they click it sometimes by accident. And so many security teams are dealing with a deluge of user-submitted phishing incidents. And often it's a case that 95, 98% of those are benign positives. Say positive because yes, the user clicked the button. There's no false positive involved here. The user did click the button to report that it was phishing, but it wasn't phishing. And from those teams, what I've heard is it still takes 30 minutes to triage it, even if it's not phishing. And the team hates doing it. They know it does not accrue to security value. So the question is why? Why do you keep doing this? Why do you still triage this queue that is full of marketing emails and spam emails? Well, the answer is the last 1 to 2% is too dangerous not to triage the full queue. This is a perfect use case for AI. Can we have the AI read the content? Can we have the AI look at the threat intelligence data about the sender, the content in the email itself, if there are links? Can we have the AI look at those links? Yeah, we can, absolutely. And what's great about that is the AI can do that 30-minute investigation. If it's a marketing email, it can tell you it's a marketing email. I'm going to go ahead and resolve it for you. But if it's actually a phishing attack, well, I've just got the first 30 minutes of my work done for me. So this is an agent that primarily is about saving time, but also really about driving focus into the right security behaviors instead of having to waste time on things that you have to do but don't really create much security value. So let me show you how it works here in a second. As we're going, just pay attention to the elements of the autonomy. You'll see the learning. I'll show you how we do active learning in the system, and I'll show you the dynamic reasoning as well. So here we are in the Microsoft Defender XDR portal. If I look at an incident queue, obviously I have lots and lots of incidents. And now you can set up the agent. When you set up the agent, it's like an app in an app store. It tells you what it does, who's published it. In this case, it's Microsoft. It tells you information about licenses. Again, in this case, it's in Defender. It's the Defender phishing agent. You've already got the license, no worries. Now, this is kind of the cool and interesting part. So when I set up the agent, I set up the identity it runs as. This allows me to govern it effectively, to audit it effectively. All of the agents you see from Microsoft Security Copilot are designed for enterprises so that they fit the models of deployment, the models of compliance and security and privacy that all of our customers need. So, like I said, set up the identity. After that, I can set up the roles. These I'm showing you here, these are actually the Defender roles that the agent can take. If I were showing you something from Purview, I would have Purview roles that I could apply. And then as we deploy the agent, it starts operating. Now, agents are really different than Security Copilot in the past in that they're operating asynchronously, autonomously on your behalf 24/7. So in this case, we're kind of fast forwarding time a bit. This agent is operating. And what we notice is that our incident queue starts to have this agent tag on it, showing where the agent has operated. So these are cases where the agent's autonomously triaged the ticket, come to a verdict, and updated the ticket with that verdict or the incident with that verdict. Now, that tag is on there to make it easy for humans to find it. So part of our principles of responsible AI and having humans in the loop. And when I drill into one of these, I see the standard short human readable summary So it's been common in Security Copilot to provide human readable summaries generated by AI of what's going on. We still have that. But this is way more complex under the hood than anything that we've released before. And in a moment, I'll show you how and why I say that, and like how it gets to that point of handling that complexity. But once I'm comfortable that the agent is operating, I don't even need to look at the incidents. It's auto-resolving. They're still there. I can come back to them and review them on a regular basis, but I don't have to do that. And if I do that, I'm able to reduce the review load by about 95%. Now, let's use an example of a case where AI gets it wrong to both show the learning, and I'm also going to show off the dynamic reasoning that I was talking about earlier. So if we look into one of these examples here, I know something this agent doesn't, which is that this email, which looks like phishing, it's correctly recognized it looks like phishing. This email is actually from an HR training vendor of my company. And I'll show you how we know this here in a second. But just like bringing a new person into a team, there's business context that the new agent doesn't have. And so again, I'm going to show you here in a second how we train the agent on this business context that allows it to be more effective. But first, let's drill into the agent. So again, I'm in Defender still within the workflow that I would already use if I'm a SOC analyst. And here, right next to the attack story, we now have the agent's activity. This tree that you're seeing, this is not a SOAR playbook. This is not a piece of static code. This is a dynamically reasoned tree where this agent used the instructions it had from the developer, guardrails from the developer and its setup, and its dynamic reasoning ability to pull threads in the investigation and look at different pieces of data. And I know it's hard to see here, so let me hit a couple of high points and we'll zoom in a little bit. What this agent actually did here was it looked at threat intelligence. So right here in the middle, you'll see 5 leaf nodes in our tree. Each one of those is it actually looking up data from Microsoft's threat intelligence sources. That could be things like reputation of a domain or an IP address. It could be looking at are there any binaries on the link that's in the email, that sort of thing. Up towards the top, you'll notice 3 kind of small red rectangles, and I'll zoom in on them here in just a second. Those are places where the agent detected something suspicious. Like I said, the agent flagged this email as a phishing attack requiring my review. And so it did actually see suspicious behavior here. So when we look a little closer, what we see is it's the semantic content of the email and the structure of the email itself that makes it look suspicious. None of the threat intelligence sources I mentioned, reputations, what content is on the link in the email, none of that had anything suspicious happening. It was just the content of the email. It goes back to like I personally know what happened. It was an HR training company sent an email to everybody, said, "Hey, click this link, take your training." So it looks suspicious, but the threat intel sources don't say anything. So it's kind of a mixed verdict. Still requires a human to look at it. Now, when we do this, we've got our verdict. We've got even a screenshot of the email, again, because this is built into the workflow. So one of Security Copilot's lessons over the last 2 years has been build into the workflow rather than trying to move the user to an entirely new workflow. So you can actually see the email during this investigation, so I can see what it looks like. Yes, it does look kind of suspicious. Let me skip ahead. But again, the reality is I know that this is not a phishing email because it's from our training vendor. So like a lot of solutions, I can change the classification. I can fix the mistake. That's great. And like a lot of systems, we're going to learn from this. We're doing a better version of learning than what's been available to prior generations of AI. And it's all down to this explain why box. So I'm going to actually explain to the agent that the problem with its reasoning was a piece of context I had that it didn't. This sender is our corporate training vendor. Don't treat this as phishing going forward. It's the same way you would teach a new employee who is taking on a task. Oh, they made a mistake. Let's correct the mistake. What's the piece of feedback necessary to make the correct decision the next time? So this right here updates the agent's instructions. It's immediately taking this feedback into account, and we'll use it going forward for me. And so here. And then at the end of all of this, we have the, oh, sorry, is there a question?
Yeah, who sees that explanation? Like, is it humans? Is it for documentation? Do the models, does Copilot see it?
Yeah, good question. Let me go back to it here. So this explanation that you're putting in is fed into Security Copilot, into the agent itself.
Good.
It's also inspectable. Like I said, we're a big believer in the enterprise and like building software that's designed for the enterprise. So other reasonable questions might be, what if the person types in bad feedback? What if somebody types in malicious feedback?
Yeah, poisoning it.
Feedback, all of those things. And so this is organizational data. And so there's actually a screen in Defender where you can go and edit the memory of the agent. So if you're an administrator, you can say, I see this piece of feedback looks like it's related to some errors we're seeing. I'm going to remove it. I could say, hey, I made a mistake. Let me go edit the feedback. I also could survey the feedback to see what types of feedback it's getting. As an administrator, you can also govern who in the organization can provide feedback in the first place. And so you get to control and say, maybe you only want experienced analysts to be providing this sort of feedback. Maybe you don't want a tier 1 team or a contractor doing so. So you're in control of it.
Thanks.
So Nick, Jack Poller with Paradigm Technica. So why did this agent get it wrong?
It's a good question. I would claim it didn't get it wrong. So in the same way that a human analyst without business context walking in and looking at an email that said, click here to take your training, the button to an external link, it's sent to my entire company. On the surface, if in the absence of any other information, I would say, block it, it's phishing. The business context we have is external to any system. It's that I have actually paid this company to send these emails to my employees. And so, and we find that's fairly common that sort of thing occurs, that there's some knowledge that the human analyst has that's outside of any of the security systems. And so in this case, we're able to improve upon the result of an AI-only system with the human business context.
All right, that makes more sense, because I looked at that and I said, that should have been marked as phishing, even if it was sent by your external vendor, right? That your external vendor sent a poorly crafted email, and we should
very poorly crafted email, yeah.
Right?
Yes, for sure they did. Absolutely, that is relatively common in this space, but the idea is to try to let you get really quickly to the ones that are malicious and badly crafted.
Okay.
Nick, I have a question as well. My name is Milu Meyer, and I'm curious about, I like the idea of being able to resolve the ones that were already looked at by the agent. And I would assume that as the SOC is getting more on board, doing more filtering, they can trust that better. Is there like a best practice recommendation then, though, of how often the team should still be going through and double checking that the resolved ones actually were properly vetted?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that we've heard from our customers in the design and the early preview process. And there's kind of two questions they ask. That is one of them, and let me give you the other one and answer it first, which is, should I do training on it before I trust it? And a lot of the customers I talk to plan on doing training of the agent following this process and actually reviewing every one of them. Now, a follow-up to that is, why on earth would I do that? Am I not going to waste a ton of time? The answer is actually no. It sounds like you would, but it's not, because the agent is doing the first 30 minutes of the investigation for you already. So you're checking its work on the work you were already doing. And it's much faster to check the work than it is to do it yourself. So pick your time window, whatever 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks seemed reasonable to evaluate it. And we recommend looking at it like, what if you brought in a new team member? How long would you look at every result from the new team member? Obviously, if they're getting every one of them wrong, you're probably prolonging the period, the training period. But if they start getting them all right pretty quickly, you're probably more comfortable moving forward. So use judgment to decide when you've hit the quality bar that you're looking for. So that's the upfront period. And again, I'd frame your question, how frequently should I review after the fact, back to kind of the same grounding. If you had new team members, how frequently would you do this? What I've heard kind of runs the spectrum. So what I've heard from some customers is, hey, we like to have a process where we review everybody's work. Maybe the infrequent review sample mistakes. That makes a lot of sense. We also have heard from customers that say 98% of these are benign positives anyway. I don't care. I'm not going to review them once I hit a comfort bar, except potentially maybe I've got a reason to go back and review. So that's really what we're hearing from our customers, or the ways that larger enterprises are looking at the review.
Nick, hi, Fernando from Futurum. What can you share? I mean, this has been out for a few weeks now. What can you share about the reality, learnings from rubber meeting the road in that surprised you and the product team?
Let's see, learnings from rubber meeting the road and what surprised me. A couple of things. One, the conditional access agent, which I'll tell to you in a minute, is more popular than we realized it would be, which is actually why I added it to this demo, because I wanted to make sure you all saw that one too, since it's our most popular one with customers. And we knew it had value, but it's clicking very quickly. The second area, again, we're a few weeks in here, is the customers who look at this from the lens of like I said, like the what would I do if I were bringing in a new person, are able to adopt faster than ones who are looking at like a traditional SaaS software purchase. Because it requires many of the same motions in your organization that bringing in new team members takes. And it's a little less like procuring SaaS software. And so that mental mindset shift is helping customers move faster. Trying to think if we've got any others at this point.
Have people been training them at the rate that you would expect them to be trained?
We trained them at the rate we would expect. I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. There is definitely customers providing feedback to the agents for their recommendations. The two that probably have the most feedback are ones, or the ones with the most feedback are ones like the phishing agent, where there's a lot of business context missing. That's maybe one other thing we're seeing is ones where there's a lot of business context in the task already, or ones where there's more feedback that's relevant and coming in. Ones where feedback is more subjective, there's less. So a good example would be our threat intelligence agent. We have had feedback to us, Microsoft, hey, here's some different ways you might consider writing about this. Here's some formatting things. but a lot of the content generation itself, there's less business context that's relevant to its task. And so as a result, you see less feedback that's relevant in the first place. So more feedback whenever there's a lot of business context that's relevant to the task. Less feedback is necessary when there's less of it.
Perfect. Thank you. One more, if I may. What's the any insights on the third-party agents as they're being used?
So some third-party agents so far. Nothing I can share. We're on an open non-NDA
Okay.
line. To be cognizant of our partners' confidentiality. We can definitely follow up under NDA with specific questions and probably even loop in some of those partners.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Nick, Sky Fugate with NetSmart Technologies. I understand for the explain why section, are you building a rule set where that agent is following a rule set and putting that into the way that it's scanning those emails? Or is this strictly instructions for the agent where, you know, if you see this domain or it looks like this is safe to accept? How are you doing that processing?
Yeah, so this is truly different than traditional approaches. Like, this is a generative AI first system in play here. And so it's a mixture of code, GPT instructions, machine learning, traditional AI. So I'm not going to give you the specific algorithms, but you can kind of think of it like we're mixing all of the relevant techniques and using AI to drive the planning elements and the reasoning elements, where it really does something that you couldn't have achieved with the prior generation pieces. And so this feedback here is driving the AI itself in our reasoning process. So it's helping improve the reasoning process of the agent.
Gotcha. So I guess one of my follow-up questions would be, generative AI is not always the most accurate. I think everyone can probably agree on that. So if I were to say, you know, if there is an email that comes from this TLD, .biz, for example, would it be smart enough to say, let me build a regex pattern that looks for that and rejects it? Or is it going to go through and scan that email as a new rule on that agent to say, do I see this? In addition to all the other logic that it's gotten.
Yeah, let me put it a little different way. Like, because I don't think we would want something that says let's block all of .biz. Maybe we do. Actually, let's take this for example. Let's take exactly that. Suppose take XYZ. I once worked at a startup with an XYZ domain, and the whole space can be viewed as fishy. So imagine I really truly did want to block a top level domain. I could tell it to block the top level domain here. Or say, I could say, always assume that .biz or .xyz is suspicious. That would influence how it approaches the task. It's not, again, I'm dancing around an element of your question. Is I'm not going to get into some of the technical details of how it works under the hood, but the effect is for it to learn what you taught it. So you taught it, my organization treats .biz as suspicious. It will recognize that .biz is suspicious going forward.
Got it. Thanks, Nick.
Yep. And it is more, sorry, and I'm want to, it's more, and what I'm getting at is it's more powerful than just like, what could I encode with a regex? So like you're capable of teaching it things the same way you might teach a person. So you might say to a person, you know, .biz is generally a little sketchy, but it's sometimes used here and here and here. Like you can give it more qualitative guidance that you could never capture in traditional code or in a regex, and it's capable of following that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, I have a question. It might be kind of taking the tail of what Sky was asking about, but it seems like processing email through an AI agent is resource intensive. There's a lot of compute resources spent on analyzing what could be a basic email. So once something, I guess, and again, maybe this isn't something you can get into, I don't know, but once something is flagged as known malicious or something like that, do we have to continue to spend the same amount of resources looking at every email that goes to every user in my organization's account, or are we building? Is the agent building a rule set to add that to be blocked?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to answer this in a couple of ways here. So the task this agent is designed to do is triaging user-submitted phishing, which is a big problem for 80 to 90% of the customers that I've spoken to. And in that task, it's difficult to get a rule set. You almost probably can't, because it's literally humans making a mistake with to submit. And so to the task of clearing those from the queue, there's probably not a rule that you could write other than to simply process them and make sure that it's reasoning about them effectively. Now, there is an upstream question, which I think is also a big piece of what you're getting at, like what happens at the email level. When the user is clicking that same button, if that is a Microsoft email system, that is also triggering an equivalent event to Microsoft. And our research teams are doing precisely what you're describing, attempting to build high performance, low latency, high quality rules that could be applied in the actual email systems themselves. And so the idea is the generative AI piece is not fast enough to run inline across billions of emails a day, just too resource intensive. So we're applying it to the very time consuming human task of triaging the false or the benign positives that come from users submitting phishing emails, and having the other out of band approach handling the super high volume email systems themselves.
Right. Yeah, Nick, that was exactly sort of what I was getting at. It's just too resource intensive for an entire organization's volume of emails to run through a generative AI platform for analysis in real time. So that's why I was kind of wondering, once that analysis is made, what's the next step? That's very cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's and again, one reason that it works in this instance for this particular task, many security teams are already investing human effort in it, and the AI components can do it faster at the same quality rate as what it would take a human team. One of the SOC manager in Germany last September told me that 3.5 of her 7 people do this task all day. That they all know it's a waste of time because they would prefer to be focusing their time on the true phishing instance. And actually, that's a good segue into. Let me show you this slide here. As I said, the concept of these agents, they're tasks many companies are already doing, and so like tasks that cost 3.5 people on a 7-person SOC, they're measured. So we've worked with our design partners to figure out what are common measurements for these tasks and to incorporate those directly into the product. So in this case, it's incident resolution rate and time to triage. So the team says, whatever, my time to triage is 20 minutes, it's 30 minutes. Well, now I can come in here and see, is this agent performing the task as quickly as the human staff was, which really helps me make this like a sound economic decision of, is this worthy of the cost? Is it worthy of the investment of my time to use this agent for this task? So any other questions before I move on from the phishing triage agent? Because I'm going to hit the other agents and then another demo.
Yeah, hey, Nick, just another quick question on that, because I love that there are KPIs on there. Is there either a different panel for this or somewhere where it's tracked where we can see KPIs for where I had to go back in and retrain the agent or teach it because it may have misclassified something?
Interesting. We don't have dashboards for it. It's relatively likely. I'm just running through the various ones in my head. The ticket-based ones and incident-based ones, you probably could get that data from the system itself. This is an interesting idea. We've not built that yet, but I definitely take that back to our team.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that it's useful because we track that KPI on our team. So.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Anybody else have questions on phishing triage before we hit the others?
Have you noticed anything different in relation to multilingual performance?
That's also a great question. So let's scope multilingual into two buckets. So the languages that the OpenAI models that we use support natively and are the ones they're good at and the ones they're not good at. So English is one of quite a few languages that the models understand. We've observed, actually, one of the most surprising things early in the product, in the development cycle, this is probably about 2 years ago, was we noticed that if you interacted with the assistive chat mode of Security Copilot in a non-English language, you would get that language back. And once you did it, it would recognize it and would preserve that throughout the session. So we've had pretty good success for the core languages that the OpenAI models support. The languages outside of that is a different story, where understanding can be weak. But yeah, the intention of the product is that, like in that feedback section, you can provide in your natural language, in your own language, your feedback to the agent. And that extends to the set of, I don't remember the exact number of them, but the more, I think it's more than 10 languages that OpenAI's models support well out of the box.
Yes.
So for the next couple of agents, I'm not going to walk you through the details. And when I show you the Interact Conditional Access agent, you'll see why. The screens, the TLDRs, the screens look virtually identical for a lot of the components. And so I'm going to talk about the business use cases, the security use cases, and then give you one more demo. So the data loss prevention and insider risk management agents in Purview really fundamentally do a task that seems pretty straightforward, that's immensely valuable for privacy analysts. Reading and classifying documents, something generative AI is pretty darn good at. And if you think about the use case here, a friend of mine recently changed jobs. He left one large tech company and went to a different large tech company. And as we would expect in that circumstance, the privacy software they were using was monitoring his activity after he'd given his notice. And he plugged in a USB device into his monitor at work. And from that point on, he had entered into a new risk class in that privacy software that they were using. And it started generating lots and lots of alerts. And there were so many alerts that their privacy team was just putting them all into a spreadsheet and sending them to his boss and asking every single day, what did he look at? What did he, since this is public, I won't say his name, but why was this person looking at this document? You can imagine just the workload required to go look at those documents and make a decision about, is this benign behavior, reasonable behavior, or is this a problem? Great use case. AI can read the document. It can help you understand what's in the document and whether or not you should care that this employee is opening this document. And it's a task that's almost impossible for human teams to get through. What we hear from most of our customers is that these queues for document review, they just get longer and longer because people can't get through more than about half of the inbound alerts in a day. So they're already missing quite a lot. They're already having to prioritize. And what the AI is doing is allowing them to get the queue down to 0, understand where the highest risk areas are, and focus on cases where, if it's insider risk, where the employee did actually look at a document or download a document, move it to a USB stick, whatever, where it really was high risk, or if it's a data loss alert, the same concept applied there. Let me pause and see if there are questions. And again, this one, I'll show you all a demo at the end of this. I absolutely love this use case. So if you've got conditional access policies in your organization, I would be willing to bet that they are out of date. I don't need to know much more than that you're using them. So good that you're using them. They're super helpful, but they're out of date. And that's because the pace of business change is so high that the policies drift from the state of the business almost immediately. You got new users, new groups, you've got new cloud applications, new deployments, changes in the organization contribute to the policy state drifting and no longer matching the real state of the organization. And companies already do review this on a regular basis. Often I talk to customers and people say, I review it monthly. And if you pause, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, quarterly, I review quarterly. And if you pause some more, sometimes you even hear people say, well, I review it once a year. But there's risk. And so you've got this risk window that's like this big. And once a quarter, you deal with this. Imagine if instead the AI agent could just close that risk window, reduce it down to a matter of minutes or hours versus months. It's a massive, massive win for the posture of the organization. And there's another element here too, which I think is a major contributing factor to why people don't do this very frequently. It's really hard to get the policies right. And if you make a mistake, there's often a pretty major business consequence. So that could be, imagine you change a policy and you knock your sales team out of your CRM. Now you're losing revenue. Nobody wants that. And so security teams that optimize these policies often end up spending days working through the what ifs and testing and doing this. Well, the agent can do all of those tasks for us, can do the cognitive load of thinking through which policies are the most important to adjust, the cognitive load of working through the crafting of the policy, and getting it to a point where you can roll it out. And like I said, I will walk you all through this one in more detail here in a couple of minutes. Any questions on this one before you hit the next one? Okay, so vulnerability intelligence. What this is going to do is going to read the vulnerability intelligence reports for you, look at your device estate. And I really do mean devices here. We're not talking about servers. We're talking about laptops. We're talking about desktops. Look at that estate and see where do you have these vulnerabilities, and look at available patches. So if you combine those three, that's the actionable thing that you can do from vulnerability intelligence about endpoints in your company. This does that work and then builds the patching group in Intune so that you can move directly to deployment without having to do the cognitive load of reading and reasoning about these, tracking down vendor patches. And it's going to cover, it's limited, only covers Windows, the operating system. And so it's going to cover operating system level patches, Microsoft patches for Windows, and third-party, so non-Microsoft patches on Windows. We don't handle Mac, we don't handle server-side Linux, that sort of thing in this release. Just the Windows and endpoint.
Hey Nick.
Yeah.
Jeff Pollard here. Do you have any information on sort of what it's using to do prioritization?
Yes. We are looking at think of it about like reasoning about the impact and trying to prioritize patches based upon the biggest impact to your organization. There's a judgment element in that. We've tried to code into the agent the type of judgment that we apply to that equation. That's also the type of thing where feedback can come into play, where you might say, hey, for example, a good example would be, hey, this device is a honeypot. I don't care. I don't ever want you to propose a patch to it. It's not even a real device. Just let it go. So that there is still room for business context to float into it. But yeah, we try to prioritize based upon the impact.
Right. But when you say impact, does that mean risk of threat, active threats that are, that are currently being exploited, sensitivity of the laptop owner, like the CEO might get higher priority than, the reception desk, those types of considerations.
Today, it is primarily focused on a few data sources. So we have, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm walking the right line of what to disclose publicly and what not to. There's a lot of information that's obviously super public about our vulnerability, about the impact if breached, your standard CVSS score.
Right.
Great. Obviously, we're using that. We also have intelligence about which CVEs are being exploited in the wild, just from our own visibility of the internet. So we can use information like that. I don't think we are yet using like crown jewel asset status on the impact question. That's obviously something that we might do. It's kind of I think it's a trade-off. When I've talked to customers in this space, it's like you could look at it and say, I want to focus on the crown jewel assets because, like you said, that's my CEO and I don't want that device breached. But you could also look at it from the perspective of like some of the biggest data breaches in history came from a single piece of software being unpatched on a device that nobody thought was a crown jewel. It just happened to have access to a database and results. So I'm not sure our customers have given us the signal yet about precisely how they want this prioritization done. And that's one of the things we hope to learn in the early preview process, and also potentially maybe we see, hey, the right answer to this is actually let the organization drive that decision through feedback to the agent or configuration of the agent.
That's actually the answer I was looking for, which is sort of we're looking for, every organization is different, and so how much tunability or how much input can you give to the agent to say, in my organization, this is what I care about and this is what I don't care about as you go about looking at all of my endpoints.
That feels like the right long-term answer to get to that point. Yeah.
Sorry, Nick, just a question. Are you planning also to gather also information that is not as in the client or from open data, such as, for example, sort of detection if an asset is a crown jewel despite the customer doesn't recognize it? For example, I don't know, I prioritize vulnerability patching on asset that has tagged the documents on Azure Information Protection, or they are sharing internal information between users that could be not recognize a crown jewel, but maybe is as a
we haven't gotten there yet. We're early in this journey. Like all of these agents are on their first steps. And so we've done something that we think produces pretty good value towards the job. We try to shoot for that like 80% in the 80-20. What you're describing to me is a really interesting idea, and is the type of thing that could be used to improve the agent over time. Could we incorporate things like you're saying, like the connections between the device and documents and other information? Absolutely, we could do that. And we may, I'm not obviously going to commit to anything on a call, but it's a very good idea.
Yeah, the big issue of the big weakness of every company is that the asset inventory is weak and is not up to date. So having different helps or a way of doing the results may help.
Yeah, and this capability is using information from Defender as well. So you don't have to have it is focused on employee devices, server-side devices, or like shadow IT. But the idea with it is, if it's got a Defender software running on it, we can see it, and so we can see what software it's running, and look at have a pretty good understanding of what the risk on the device is. It's not dependent on an asset inventory. It's dependent upon real installed state. And our threat intelligence briefing agent, what it's doing is kind of the server-side equivalent, or at least the first parts of the server-side equivalent of the Intune vulnerability patching story. So it's looking at intelligence about threat actors and what actors are doing, what cyber criminal groups are doing, and looking to see, do those is there evidence inside of your system that there is a problem? Is there signal that you might be somebody who would be targeted by these organizations? And so we're looking at things like geography and sector and vulnerability intelligence and the software you're running, and the types of software and infrastructure that you run. And this produces a briefing report covering the cyber threats and the vulnerability intelligence that's relevant to your organization. And it's meant to really empower cyber threat analysts to do more, or to empower organizations that can't afford to have a cyber threat analyst on their team to have something to get them started.